everyone. Today I am going to be doing a tag. I think this is the history as a bookworm. I'm not confident in showing my face yet.
Oh, not confident, more like I have a tendency to delete content when it features my face because I don't like the way it looks or I look after a couple of months rewatching the content I make.
I do have the questions here, but I will also be putting them down below. I will also link the YouTuber who I got the content from. I'm not sure if there are many YouTubers or booktubers who do this type of content. I saw one, but their last upload was like 6 years ago. So firstly, when did you start reading and how old were you when you started reading? I don't exactly remember when I started reading. It was either 6 to 7 because those were my formative years, and my 6 looks like an upside down 9. But yes, around this is when I started to read, and I'm not really exactly sure whether it's early 6 or late 6, so it's somewhere around there. Next question. What is the first book you have read? So the first book I have ever read, it's Anne of Green Gables. And as you can see, it's a very old book. It's hanging by a thread, literally. But as you can see, all the pages are still there. There's also illustrations. But it's a very worn book, well loved. It has served me many years. The next question is, name the first 5 books that you have read. Aside from Anne of Green Gables, I have also read Little Women, Julius Caesar, The Merchant of Venice. I've actually read a lot of William Shakespeare, and I've also read Dracula, but I don't have the copy anymore with me. As you can see, I have a Western classical book reading start. So next question, who inspired you to start reading? If I have to think on it, it would be either my mother. Next, what is the very first book that you have bought? I don't recall if I have the book with me that I have actually bought first, because my mother was always the one who bought the books, because she used to go to Manila, the Philippines. It didn't really have to be Manila, but it just had to be one of the more well-populated cities. Cagayan de Oro at that time could be considered like a hub of foreign imports, I guess you could say, because in my city, it's a very small city compared to these like giant cities, right? A speck on the board compared to these giant cities. There's no competition, so it was difficult to find books that I liked, and we didn't really have a bookstore here in my city. So, and when I say we didn't have a bookstore, I am being very serious. We literally did not have any. The only way I could get books was through my mom, who traveled in order to expand the business and all that. So that's the only way I could get the books, or through birthday gifts and the like. So it was a very struggling hobby to get into. Now we do have, I think, a bookstore, but ever since the pandemic hit and ever since I left, it seems like I came back to a barren wasteland where there isn't really a lot of fiction. It's more religious and educational books that they have in the store. And the store I'm referring to is National Bookstore. It's a very big name brand because it's national, but our version is very small here. So what's the first book that made you say, oh my days, I love reading? I cannot decide between Dracula or Anne of Green Gables, because Anne of Green Gables, it's weird now to read it through the lens of an adult. These war-torn glasses of mine that has a very interesting perk of being able to be snapped. Knowing the context of Anne of Green Gables and the times that she lived in, it's really interesting now to see that nuance. But to me, she was a very strong, independent woman, sort of like Little Women. So I was really inspired by her. I really wanted to be Anne of Green Gables. She was educated, she knew what she wanted from life, and I really wanted to be like that. I mean, I'm not. If kid me could see me now, she'd be very disappointed. Next question. what is the first book that you recommend others to read? This one is a bit difficult because I tend to ask people what kind of genre they want, how long the story they want it to be. Is it grounded in reality? Because there are some stories that are, for example, mystery. It does not necessarily have to be Sherlock Holmes where it's grounded in reality. It could be magical reality. I guess you could say magical realism, right? And then there's also, do you want a reliable narrator or questionable? What kind of main character are you looking for? Is it a Percy Jackson witty type of character, or are you looking for a more dark, brooding, edgy character? I don't have a one-all be-all recommendation for book readers because every reader is different, and I don't want to be the reason why they don't like reading, you know. That's like a tremendous amount of pressure to put on me, and as someone who does not like pressure, that's a no for me. Definitely not something I want to get into. Do you think reading books has a significant impact on your personality? If so, why? Honestly, it's made me obnoxious. No offense to any person who likes this character. I'm only interested in reading the fanfiction, especially the political ones. Now that I think about it, this person who I despise is actually me. In the sense that reading books gave me a sense of superiority, of being well read, being educated, I guess in a sense, and being creative, you know, those like, oh my gosh, I'm not like all the other girls. It's sort of like a pick-me, but I wasn't interested in the romance. I was basically the wannabe alt girl. Is that even a term? I don't know if I'm using the terms properly, but yes, it didn't help that there's a stigma behind smart or brainy type people. Those who are considered smart in Philippines are mocked, especially those who are English era. If you were good or you were decent in speaking in English and you could speak a full sentence without stuttering or mixing it in with the local language, which is either Bisaya or Tagalog, which I don't actually know how to read Tagalog. I can read Tagalog, I cannot speak it, and I cannot write in it, you know? I struggle a lot. But if you were a very good English speaker, they would use this term. I guess you could say scarred me a lot. This pissed me off. I hate this fucking word. It really annoyed me. It didn't discourage me from speaking English. It just discouraged me from speaking to others because I was more comfortable in speaking English because I was used to it. I read a lot of English Western books, and you know, it was a struggle. Every time I spoke, it felt like everyone was making fun of me for knowing how to speak English fluently. I never watched Filipino shows. I've only watched the occasional TV shows, like I can't think of any right now. I'll just pop some examples on the screen of some of the shows I've watched. To be honest, it's been so long I don't even remember. But yeah, I was not a huge Filipino watcher. It never piqued my interest. Maybe now I would laugh at the comedy, but it was never my thing. I think if I had an opportunity to watch movies that were historical, because I've always been a fan of historical films, I think I would have been more interested in a more diverse set of Filipino films. Nowadays, I have some favorites. What made you decide to make an online platform dedicated to reading? Now, this channel is not just dedicated to reading. Well, it used to be. That was my plan. This is my third, I think, channel for BookTube, but I never really got into it because it's kind of difficult for me to make content that has my face because I hate my face. I want this channel to be something that doesn't feature my face and just features the content. I'm not going to be as up to date with booktube culture and booktube recommendations, because I don't like being peer pressured into reading books because they're popular, not a must read, you know. So even if my favorite booktube author, what am I saying? Author, booktube content creator says you have to read this, I'm not gonna. And I don't care whether the world is pressuring me to read it, I will not read it. I will read at my own pace. And my own pace is usually when everyone's done reading it. I'm the only one fangirling for it. What's my advice for new bookworms? So when it comes to being a bookworm, especially if you're new, you have to think of these things. Firstly, budget. Secondly, location. And I'll get to these in a second. I think that's how you spell it. So firstly, budget. If you are lucky enough to get into a family who has a lot of allowance to give you, my recommendation is buying books that are not series, so one-offs. Don't buy trilogies or duologies unless you're sure you're gonna like it or you've read the first book and want to read more. That's when I'm like, okay, you've tested the waters, you like it, that maybe you can buy the entire thing. Obviously, you have to focus on one-offs, not series, if you are on a tight budget. If you're on a big budget, hey man, do whatever, spend however. Next is location. Like I said before, I said that it was quite difficult to buy books because my city did not have a bookstore, and then afterwards the book collections weren't a lot, so any fresh books I had to get on bigger cities. So location is also important. If you have online opportunities like now, before, you know, online shopping was quite I didn't even know it existed. My parents also didn't know it existed. Nowadays it's more commonplace. Back then it was a struggle. So now location doesn't quite as matter because you can buy it online. But if you live far out, you still would probably need to consider location. So next, we have fast or slow. What does this mean? Fast reader or slow reader. Hello there. I'm re-recording this segment because I ended up going on a tangent that wasn't necessary. But basically, bulk buy because you end up going through the books quickly. However, if you're a slow reader, I recommend just buying a book with a schedule. Lastly, tsonduku. Tsonduku is a Japanese concept. I don't know if this is right, or I think I'm mixing up the O's and U's. But basically, this is a concept where you are a book hoarder. That's the term. I discovered this term in elementary, so it really applies to me. I don't care if you call it materialistic. I really like hoarding books. I really like coveting books. I'm like the crow version. Instead of shiny things, it's books. I do hope you guys enjoyed